Hello, I welcome you all to this Ghar Baithe UPSC channel. After a long time, I'm coming with a video on UPSC Essay Discussion. In my previous video, friends, I've discussed about why many aspirants during the mains 2022 attempt were unable to score beyond 115, 120 on an average. So taking cue from that video, let us try to discuss a sample video today on a topic which has been discussed in the past few months, especially during the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, in one of his speeches. That is, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I am Kedar Kulkarni, your friend, your mentor for UPSC examinations. This is my Telegram channel, and please request you all to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that your support will help me to bring out more such important videos. So this topic has been doing the rounds in Indian Express and in many of the magazines as well. The moment the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, mentioned it in one of his speeches a few months ago. Now, the reason for discussing this topic is also that some of you or many of you, those who are watching this video, might be attempting the upcoming mains or at the same time preparing for essay writing for the 2024 and onwards attempt. So this is an honest and humble attempt to give you an idea of how can we brainstorm and give justice to such kinds of topic which are kind of philosophical in nature and at the same time have a very deep meaning. And oftenly UPSC has been asking many such essay topics. So let's begin the discussion. Now, what do you mean by the arc of the moral universe, right? So arc, everyone knows that it's kind of a part of a circle, right? A curved structure. So here the arc doesn't mean the literal meaning of a structure, a semicircle or a curved structure. It means that it is the time taken by the universe or by the humans for the justice to be seen or to manifest. Therefore, we say that the arc of moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. That means ultimately we will get justice, but it may take some time. Now, this quote has been often attributed to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and many of you know already about Dr. Martin Luther King. He was the champion of civil rights movement. He fought for the African American black citizens. They were harassed. They were subjugated to all sorts of mistreatment, and he stood up for their rights. And in many of his speeches, he has used this phrase. Now, if we look at the original source of this quote, it belongs to a Unitarian minister and abolitionist, Theodore Parker of Massachusetts, that is in USA. So Unitarian means someone who believes in the idea of uniting various beliefs, and at the same time, abolitionist means that they forego some kind of our belief structures or myths which are there, and they try to come up with some rational thought process, right? So he was the person who has originally been attributed to introduce this quote. Dr. Martin Luther King has also given a very famous quote during his speeches, that is, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, this quote in itself can be another essay topic, but the entire quote goes as such that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever effort affects one directly affects all indirectly. So, in short, he wanted to say that it is the duty of every citizen, or rather every person, to stand up for justice and fight for justice. Let's say if we come from a privileged class, and people from privileged class usually do not take interest in the issues or the problems which are faced by the less privileged class. But somewhere down the line, the social issues which plague our society because someone is being affected eventually has a direct or indirect impact on all the members of society. And he has very aptly said so, right? We can take the example of Indian history, that even during the Indian freedom struggle, when the Britishers came into India, a huge section of the society was not aware or not interested in having any kind of revolt. Only patches or only certain people fought for the rights of their own citizens, their subjects, especially the princely states. And we see that it is only when the social reformers created a kind of a spirit of awakening, when people realize that yes, the British rule is not just affecting a few people, but it is affecting one and all. And that is when we eventually got our freedom. And that's how we can say that India got its due justice. So we'll try to dissect this topic now. This is the overall meaning which I told you, so that whenever you want to introduce any essay topic, it is important for you to address the key meaning of the topic, so that the examiner knows that yes, you have understood the topic, and uh, you are giving justice to what has been asked in the very first few lines. Okay. Now moving forward, let's see dissect the detailed meaning of this quote. Now, as I said, the arc of the moral universe. That means the justice system, the delivery system may take time, but eventually the universe will always move towards the direction of justice. So that means it is a foregone conclusion. इसका मतलब हमें पता ही है कि justice मिलने ही वाला है, and will eventually come about on its own. That's the literal meaning, what we can sense. But that is how the arc of universe bends. Okay. But will this arc of universe automatically bend? Obviously not. Even during the example which I gave for Indian freedom struggle, one of the key aspects was the mobilization of masses by freedom struggles, social reformers, to create a sense of awakening and a sense of duty and responsibility towards our country. And only then the masses rose up and fought for justice. In this entire essay, I will be discussing a spate of various examples through which you will understand how we can give justice to this topic by explaining various examples, national and international, and from different sections of society who have fought for justice. So, in your essay, this argument should definitely come that the moral arc won't automatically bend towards justice. We need human efforts to make the moral arc bend in the direction of justice, without which we won't be getting the justice in a quick or efficient manner, right? So that is how we need to slowly open up our essay in the first or second paragraph towards this dimension as well. We say, right, Kanun andha hota hai. So that means the law is fair, or it seems to be fair to all, right, without giving any favoritism to any of the parties. But we also need to ensure that we take efforts into the direction of expediting our justice system, so that it doesn't take too long, right? Because there is a saying that justice delayed is justice denied. बहुत बार हम ये भी कहते हैं कि भगवान के घर देर है पर अंधेर नहीं. That means that is also a Hindi quote which we can link to this topic. That means eventually justice, or the word which we use, one of the closest word which we use in Hindi or Devanagari, that is dharma. Okay, dharma is also close to righteousness, and it is also close to justice. Therefore, you can also use these quotes, but you need to transliterate them into English, not write them in Devanagari or any other script, just write them in English itself. Right? So many students ask, sir, how do we introduce an essay? Now, in these slides, I haven't given the detailed points for the body part. I will be discussing them orally or verbally here. I will give that task to you to elaborate the discussion into an essay, and then you can submit it to me. So let's start with the introduction of the essay, because that is the most difficult part which many people find, and including the कंक्लूजन पार्ट, बॉडी बहुत लोग लिख लेते कोई ना कोई एग्जाम्पल देके. So this is just one of my ways of introducing. I always use a very simplistic way of introducing, that is a quote, and if possible, or if I don't have a quote, I'll just try to use effective language to give justice to the topic. Now, here I have mentioned that since the dawn of human civilization, justice has always been an eternal quest for the manifestation of a fair, righteous, egalitarian, and a peaceful society. Right? So I have always started on a historical note and tried to give the importance of justice, that it has been an eternal quest. Means since time immemorial, we are always in the journey or in the process of seeking justice so that we can have a fair, righteous, and a equal society. And only when these are there, we can have a truly peaceful society. The need for justice has been felt in every era. Whenever there is a rise in barbarism, that means where there is a breakdown of law and order, where the privileged class will try to oppress the lesser privileged class or the weaker sections, leading to breakdown of law and order, and where the innocents are harassed. Now, every civilization, every country has seen some other form of barbarism in their countries, right? And also in every era, we find that justice has always prevailed, even if it takes time to bring order in the society. Thus, we say that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it always bends towards justice. Now, some of you asked that uh, during the toppers' mark sheet, when they upload them after their clearing of the exam, you might have seen many of the toppers also start with some kind of a story or an anecdote, right? Now that requires practice. Okay, so let's say if the very first paragraph we discussed about, the first slide rather we discussed about was Dr. Martin Luther King. Right? So you can start with the story by saying that it was a time of early 19th century, 20th century, where the African American were subjugated to a lot of discomfort, and their rights were being trampled upon. During these dark times rose a man called as Dr. Martin Luther King, who fought for the rights of the less privileged and ensured that they get their due dignity and fundamental rights as equal to any other human beings on earth. Something like that, you can have a story to give introductory, a theme or an opening to the topic, right? And then you can say that the arc of moral universe is long, but it always bends towards justice. Now we'll see a lot of examples in the upcoming slides. Right? Dr. Martin Luther King's fight for the civil rights in itself is one major example where it took so many years for the African American people to get their due rights. Similarly, if we start from our ancient history or the very core source of our dharma, that is Mahabharata and Ramayana, right? So the entire story of Mahabharata revolves around how justice can be established. And in that, we all know the infamous case of Draupadi. She was being stripped off when she prayed for justice to Lord Sri Krishna, and justice was given to her. But that is just one aspect of Mahabharata. And after that, the Kauravas were defeated by the Pandavas in the epic Mahabharata battle. And during that time, Lord Shri Krishna also gave Arjuna, when he was in a dilemmatic situation whether to fight or not. So he gave them the idea of what dharma stands for, why you need to come out of this dilemma and fight for justice, dharma, right, which is your key role in this life. So one statement which you all might have seen in Gita also, yada yada hi dharmasya planir bhavati bharata abhyut naman adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyam. Whenever, O descendant of Bharata, righteousness declines and unrighteousness prevails, I manifest myself. Right. So it means that even in our religious scriptures, even if you look at some of the Abrahamic religions, right, there is something which we call it as the Judgment Day. Right. So even in this theory, many people believe that there will come a time when a Lord will get or evaluate the actions of men based on the righteousness and the wrong acts they have done, and they will be rewarded or punished accordingly. Right? So, the very source of justice, we can say, comes from our religious scriptures and also through our societal norms, and in the modern time, it is the constitutional context. Right? So, slowly you can open up your essay with this example, that is how Mahabharata was fought for the cause of justice, including Ramayana as well. If you want, if you have the time and space to think about both these epics, you can write about Mahabharata, Ramayana, where both of them have ultimately have the concept of justice, so that the citizens and the people who were at the receiving end get their due dignity. Moving forward, we know that how Acharya Chanakya established order into his kingdom, right, by making Chandragupta the king and defeating Dhanananda. So his entire Arthashastra, some of the aspects also talk about how a king should behave in a responsible way and truly impart justice to his subjects, right? And that is what Chandragupta also did in his times by following the advice of Acharya Chanakya. Then from our Mahabharata also we have a very important quotation which is called as Yato Dharmas Tato Jayaha. And this is the logo of our Supreme Court of India. So in one of your paragraphs, you can also use this as an introductory line, Yato Dharmas Tato Jayaha. Where there is justice, there is victory. And then thus it is important to always strive for justice, right? Because wherever there is justice, there is righteousness, there is fairness. People live in harmony, and there the victory prevails. Even during a medieval times, we see Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, one of the greatest examples of how justice can be established through the righteous way and by fighting off the barbaric events that led to a lot of harassment, the breakdown of temples, and many of the weaker sections were harassed during a certain time of the Mughal Empire. And it was Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj who established that righteousness, the dharma, that is the justice, right? And he ensured that not just the Hindus, but also the Muslim population get their due rights and they live in peace and harmony. So that is the greatness of this man. Now, these were all the Indian examples. We can also come to the Western example, because I always say that the essay should be a blend of Indian as well as Western examples. So that shows your international as well as national outlook. And the examiner will also appreciate the fact that yes, you're aware about the various dimensions of that topic, and that your thought process are not confined to any boundaries. This quote is also very beautiful and relevant to this topic, because in the initial half we discussed that the moral arc will not bend automatically. So this quote fits there. Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. That means the similar context which you discussed in the first slide, कि जो privilege section है वो जब तक लेस प्रिविलेज सेक्शन का साथ नहीं देंगे तब तक जस्टिस इन अ होलिस्टिक वे will never be dispensed, right? तो तब तक पूरा justice किसी को नहीं मिलेगा. That quote also you can use in between, and then you can open up the topic of, let's say, the American War of Independence, right? And also the French Revolution. Okay. So both these can be a part of your paragraph and talk about how American, the War of Independence. Then you can also talk something about Abraham Lincoln, right? His efforts to seek justice or rights to the less privileged. At the same time, during the French Revolution, the three ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity can also be discussed. Right? And that is so, because there is one more quote which says that justice is nothing but liberty, equality, fraternity. I read it somewhere. You can attribute that quote also here. Right? One more interesting quote is regarding justice for the laborers. So before the world wars, you might be aware that once the industrial revolution started in the US and some parts of Europe, right, there was a lot of exploitation going on, and also the colonialism was there, where the colonial people, I mean the people who belong to the colonial states, were subjugated to a lot of harassments and exploitation. Right, human trafficking was rampant. People used to be forcefully taken from one country to another, and all sorts of human rights violations were happening. So Karl Marx, the legendary figure, uh, talked about the workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. So this is a call for justice, right? And that is how people from era after era come up and awaken the masses so that they will fight for the justice. So that means we every time we have to prove that the moral arc is not automatically bending, but in respective eras, wherever or whenever there is an injustice, great leaders have always come and shown the way towards justice, right? And have inspired the people to fight for their righteous cause. So you can also talk about the French Revolution, that the revolution was a manifestation of liberty, equality, and fraternity for a equitable and a just society, right? So from that also we have sought inspiration into our constitution and also imbibed it into our preamble. Right? Everyone knows that. Then let's talk about the World War. One of the most heinous and bloodiest wars which ever happened on the face of earth were the World War One and World War Two. And especially during the World War Two, everyone knows that how Hitler persecuted the Jews, and the Jews finally got justice through their Nuremberg trials, which took place after the defeat of Germany and the fall of Adolf Hitler. Right. So now there are multiple strands attached to this Nuremberg trials. There are some uh, ethical dilemmas also vested with this. Maybe we'll try to discuss it someday later. But ultimately, whenever there is a trial or whenever there is an official court of inquiry, it is always a process of securing justice. And the Nuremberg trials was one of the so-called closures which the Jews got for the atrocities, the unimaginable atrocities through which they had to pass through. Similarly, let's not forget how women have to struggle for hundreds of years to secure their rights. And the struggle is still a work in progress, I would say. Right? We still haven't reached to a phase where women can vouch for the fact that yes, they have a very fair or free environment in which they are being given equal rights as comparable to the men. Right? Yes, some countries have those equal rights already, but on a universal scale, if we weigh all the countries together, the injustice still bends in favor of women, unfortunately. So, what can be the examples given for justice for women? You can start with the fight which women had in America and European countries for their adult franchise. Okay. Now, one aspect which we talk about in Indian society is about patriarchal society and everything that. But once we got our independence and once our constitution came into force, India gave equal voting rights or franchise rights to both men and women. That is a great feature, I would say, and we should thank our constitution makers, our constituent assembly makers, to envisage this equality right at the very inception of our constitution. But even in the so-called advanced nation, even after the American independence, even after the development of the European countries, only in the early 20th century were women were, able to secure voting rights for themselves. Right, so that is a travesty which even women had to face, even in the so-called advanced nations. So that is one example you can talk about for women fighting for their rights. You can also talk about how the uh, women have to fight for justice and wait for justice for various heinous crimes like rape, murder, right, or molestations. The infamous case being that of Nirbhaya, where after so many years, we finally had a closure a few years ago, right? During 2011-12, this case, everyone knows about that. And It took almost like 8 to 9 years for that entire case to get closure and for the perpetrators to get hanged, right? So they eventually get justice, but the justice dispensation process takes time, right? So in our essay, we'll also need to address that topic. So I'll tell you how to address that. Okay, that yes, justice ultimately does occur, but we need to have a speedy justice, effective justice delivery mechanism, so that justice delayed is not justice denied. We also have an example of the apartheid, where Nelson Mandela from South Africa, now both Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela both sought inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi in their non-violent fight against the African American people. And Nelson Mandela is such a prime example because even after he was jailed for so many years, he came out, he fought for the rights of the lesser privileged, he fought against the apartheid, which was there against these African people, and finally gave justice for them, right? And his justice was not just for the black people, the African people, but he also ensured that even the whites, that is the so-called racially superior people, uh, also get equal rights along with black. So when he came to power, he didn't say कि नहीं अभी blacks को मैं सबसे ज्यादा power दूंगा, right? और whites को मैं अभी कम power दूंगा. No. In spite of the fact that whites oppressed against the African people, he ensured that all the people are treated equally and respectfully. That is the vision of such great people, and that is how justice has to be ensured in any society. Now, coming to India again, we have great social reformers in India. You can name a few of them because it's not possible to name all of them in an essay, right? You can name some of them who have strove for the equality, right? The famous examples which always come to our mind is Mahatma Gandhi, Swami Vivekananda, Dr. Ambedkar. Obviously, I'll be talking about them in the next slide also, right? Yeah, Jyotirao Phule, Savitribai Phule, all these examples can come. Even, in the medieval part, you can also give the example of Ahilyabai Holkar as one of the prominent lady figures, or a lady queen, a lady ruler rather, so who established the administration on the virtue of justice and fair treatment for all. Okay. So, and similarly, you can talk about Dayanand Saraswati, Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, the Phule couples for helping the downtrodden, right, who were treated in one of the most abominable ways, and how they uplifted the masses and gave them hope, gave them or rekindled their hope. We can use this word, rekindled their hope, right, for securing justice and their due rights and dignity of life, right? So that is how many of the let's say the lower class, which we use the term in our sociology, had to wait for hundreds of years for their justiciable and their equal rights with the upper caste. And the social reformers, then coming to the modern times, we have Dr. Ambedkar, who fought incessantly for the rights of these people and eventually established the equitable or a just society through the constitutional acts as well. Okay, something which you can talk about after talking the social reformers. As I said, the Indian freedom struggle is also an example of how the arc of the moral universe is long, but ultimately India also achieved its independence after incessant fighting for almost 200 years. A separate topic can also be given to Dr. Ambedkar for his fight for abolishing discrimination. And he ensured that through constitutional ways, through political ways, and also through social reform measures, right? So one bright example which we all always should use, and this topic, whenever there is a topic of justice, it goes without saying that Dr. Ambedkar has to be the de facto example into your essay writing, right? So his vision as the architect of Indian Constitution have codified that what are the articles, what are the schedules which will ensure a just, equitable, fair, and a cooperative society in India. Right? And this constitution continues to be a guiding light for serving that justice for all the subjects or all the citizens of India. In that also we find in our preamble we have like an important word justice, social, economical, and political. Right. So that is one of the first virtues which is mentioned in our preamble, justice. Then comes liberty, equality, fraternity. Right. So a just society is always an aim which will have a egalitarian outlook. Going forward, we also have the international example again of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, the context of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, many of you know that after the World War, the world had seen a humongous amount of tragedy, bloodshed, right, and human rights violation of the highest order. Therefore, there was a need for the establishment of United Nations so that there will be a beginning of minimal coordination among countries, and every men, women, no matter from which caste, creed, gender, race, country, area they come, they will, each and every individual on this planet will be treated with equal respect and dignity. And that is for the very reason why we have United Nations Rights Declaration, right? So that is where you can also talk about these rights, that these rights gave the justice to the lesser privileged who were affected during the world wars. Now there are around 30 rights. You can use some of them in your essay writing. I have just given you a comprehensive list of all the human rights which have been talked about during the formation of the same, and then you can use these into your essay writing. Then the point I was talking about was that of the counter argument. So does the moral arc bend automatically? No. But then it doesn't mean that we should wait for an indefinite time for justice to get delivered, right? We are now living in an era where colonialism has gone away, and we have the concept of nation state, where almost we can say that no country is under foreign rule as such. Yes, there are still many conflicts in Africa, Russia Ukraine issue is still there, राइट, बट ऐसा अब तक कोई एग्जाम्पल नहीं है जहां पर किसी एक कंट्री दूसरे कंट्री के ऊपर अभी पूरा कंट्रोल एस्टेब्लिश किया. सो एवरी कंट्री स्टिल हैज देयर ओन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन टू सर्व एज अ लाइट हाउस, एज अ गाइडिंग लाइट, which will help them in the justice delivery system. But every country needs to ensure that there is a speedy dispensation for justice, right, without waiting for the moral arc to come towards the justice on its own. तो उसके लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा? जैसे इंडिया के अंदर वी टॉक अबाउट judicial reforms, and the very beginning of this essay discussion I had with why this topic is in news, because Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud used it in one of his speeches. The context of that speech was how judicial reforms can ensure speedy justice into India. So that was one of his core themes of his the speech. In that context, he said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. That means he said that yes, it has taken time for judicial reforms, but now it is happening at a faster pace, and eventually we will see that this will also reflect into speedy justice delivery. Now, as we discuss, for justice to manifest, it is not just the duty of the judiciary, the legislature or executive alone, but we also need an active civil society. Civil society मतलब जो हम जैसे common men and women have, right? They need to be always keeping these three organs accountable, right? So that justice delivery system is taking place at a faster rate. Secondly, we also need a fair, transparent and accountable executive, legislature and judiciary for a speedier justice dispensation. ये भी पॉइंट आपके आंसर में आना चाहिए. There is a beautiful quote which says that the dead cannot cry for justice. It is the duty of the living to do so for them. Right? So therefore, even if we say that there a lot of times the justice takes a lot of time, so it is the duty of the living to continue the fight for justice. Right? Best example again is the freedom struggle, where it took almost 200 years. Now, almost we had 2 to 3 generations which fought incessantly for the cause of our freedom, and only then we could see the tryst with destiny. right? There's a dawn of freedom in 1947. So that is what we mean by the dead cannot cry for justice, but it is a duty of the living to continue pursuing for the cause of justice. All right. So that's how counter arguments are also supposed to come into your essay. Then let's come to modern times. What kind of justice are we seeking now? The biggest challenge in front of us is the climate change. And there is a huge call for a concept called as climate justice. Especially, you might have seen young people, the likes of Greta Thunberg, you can see her here, right? Who are incessantly talking about the need for climate justice, because we are living in an era where a lot of environmental changes have happened. And the causative factor for these environmental changes are the rich or the privileged countries who have traditionally used the fossil fuels and caused the global warming and the ensuing climate change. उनके वजह से आज जो सबसे गरीब देश है, जो सबसे वल्नरेबल सेक्शंस है, राइट, जो ट्राइबल लोग हैं, आज जो सफर कर रहे हैं. Then there is one more term called as small island developing states, SIDS. These countries are also at the forefront of suffering from the wrath of climate change when they are the ones who have contributed the least to the climate change, right? So even these countries are demanding climate justice. So climate justice is a concept where the people who have contributed the least to the climate change deserve the right amount of compensation and the attention, so that their lives and their livelihoods are not at stake, right? So that is where all the small island developing states are demanding in the form of loss and damage compensation. That is also a form of climate justice, right? Loss and damage. So that is also one of the key pillars of climate justice. And even the young people, the tribal, are also equal stakeholders in demanding climate justice, because they are one of the key people who are affected because of climate justice. Okay, that's how you can open up this dimension of climate justice in modern times, and how we need to continue to pursue that cause for the various stakeholders in the society to have a sustainable future, right? Then let's not forget about other genders, okay, men, women. At the same time, let's talk about the LGBTQ rights. Now, in many countries, including India, you might have seen that there is a lot of protest, or a lot of attention is being given to this demand that LGBTQ rights need to be given their due respect. They need to be decriminalized. Many countries have already decriminalized that, including the Indian Supreme Court by abolishing Section 377. And now the fight has gone to the next level, that they need to have certain rights for the property, for marriage, and also to have children, right? So that is the next level of rights the people are fighting for. So therefore, don't make your essay, whenever there is a talk of justice, let's not limit our essay to only men and women, but also have this dimension of the other genders and different sections of the society who are always vulnerable and seeking justice. You can also talk about the elderly people, women, children, jitne bhi log hai, garib log, right? How they had to fight for justice. There are many other examples which you can highlight in your essay, but it depends on how the flow of your essay is, right? The reason I'm mentioning the most famous one, or the very unique ones, is because they are directly related to the topic, and we can put them in a decent flow. Now, once we have given all these various examples from various eras of how the concept of justice has evolved and continues to evolve, we can conclude by saying that peace and justice are two sides of the same coin. It was said by Dwight D. Eisenhower. So, therefore, justice can help us achieve SDGs, and justice in terms of all aspects, that is social, economic, political, and also environmental in modern times. And therefore, we can say that in a dynamic and evolving world, the idea of justice will have various dimensions. This is my way of concluding. You can all have your own way of concluding, no problem. In a dynamic and evolving world, the idea of justice will have various dimensions. But we must constantly strive for the principle of justice to prevail. Only then can we envisage a peaceful, harmonious, cohesive, cooperative, just, and equal society. Virtue should be rewarded and vice should be punished, right? Even in the films you see ना कि जो कोई भी फिल्म होती है तो उसके अंदर हम there is a happy ending. Why? Because that is a human nature to show that how virtue is rewarded and the vice means जो लोग गलत काम करते हैं और जो अच्छा काम करते हैं उनको एक कोई they deserve the justice, they deserve the reward, and the guilty people should always be punished. That is the law of nature, and that is the law of humans, because only a just and a fair society can collectively prosper and progress, avoid discrimination and frictions by ensuring the dignity of every living being on this planet. Now, I have used the word intentionally living being because we are not just ensuring justice for humans, but we are also ensuring justice for Mother Nature and all her subjects, be it plants or the other animal species, birds, etc. Right? So that is the holistic outlook you should always have in your essay, be it the introduction, be it your body, and more importantly, your conclusion. Right? Many people unfortunately don't know or have developed the skill to write a good conclusion where they can have a togetherness approach and which gives a way forward where there is a universal outlook, right? Even if there is a topic on India, right, try to end the conclusion on Indian line and also give a universal outlook. The examiner will definitely appreciate that. Okay, so this is just one of the ways in which you can write the essay, and you may also have your own unique way of writing. If you want to give some examples, you can mention that in the comment section below, right? I'll be Others can also take you or help from your thought process. So thank you so much for listening and being patient. So my always sincere suggestion is to work hard and at the same time work smart. For any doubt, I am always there to help you. It doesn't matter if you're a part of my mentorship or not. I'm always eager to help all of you. This is my WhatsApp as well as Telegram number 9075204506. Always happy to help. Please, as a small request, if you have appreciated the efforts for this essay writing discussion, do like this channel, subscribe it so that I will understand, and yes, people are appreciating the effort, then I can come up with more such important content for your preparation. So thank you so much, and see you very soon with yet another video for helping you get one step ahead in this UPSC preparation. Take care.